All right. Okay, it's about time to start. So hi everyone. Welcome to Climate, Environment, Resource and Agriculture in China session. My name is Qi. I'm a PhD candidate from University of California, Davis. I'm pleased to join this session, and I'm excited to learn the research of all of our presenters today. So we have 8 presenters. Each of them will have 7 minutes to present, and following by 2 minutes discussion. So our first presenter is Xiaobing Wang from Peking University. I think he is not here yet. So we can start with hello? Okay. We can start with Quan, and then we can come back to Xiaobing when he is available online. Okay. So let's welcome Quan from Nanjing Agriculture University. Quan, can you unmute yourself and share your screen? Okay.
Hello everyone, I'm Quan. Thanks for coming to listen to my presentation today. I'll share my screen. Can you see that?
Yeah. Okay, you can start.
Okay. During the next 7 minutes, I shall be speaking about our work. The topic of my presentation is, does fertilizer application respond to climate change? Here is the outline. I will introduce it in 6 parts. Let's move on to the background. The reason for choosing this topic is we are facing 2 major crises, climate change and fertilizer overuse. As you can see from the figure, the climate of China has changed during the last several decades. In general, temperatures have increased and precipitation have increased. At the same time, China has witnessed the strong upward trends of fertilizer application and crop yield. According to the FAO database, China is currently the country with the highest fertilizer application in the world. Then look at the right figure. We split the fertilizer into 3 types: nutrition, phosphorus, and potassium. We use violin plots to compare. The lowest amount of fertilizer application is nitrogen. So, does climate change make fertilizer overuse worse? Before answering that question, we need to clarify whether climate change is increasing or decreasing in the fertilizer application. Now, let's review the studies on climate change. Researchers on the impact of climate change on agriculture mainly focus on crop yields, food prices, and trade, and agriculture adaptation to climate change. What's more, many studies have also noticed the impact on fertilizer in agronomy and economics. In agronomy, fertilizer efficiency is a major concern. However, economics researchers are focused on the farmer's input decision. Different researchers came up with different conclusions. The exact change of fertilizer application driven by climate are complex, and the convenience are divided into 4 major categories. Opinion 1 argued that climate would increase fertilizer application through following pathways, such as era of double and triple ripe will be expanded in China. In contrast, some studies have suggested that climate would decrease fertilizer application. The third opinion adjusted that the impact is uncertain, which depends on crop substitution and improved variety. Once economic feasibility is considered, the picture will be more complicated. Farmers have to consider attitude toward risk and liquidity constraints. So, based on the discussion before, we can see that there is little formal expansion in macro level. What we want to discuss is whether climate change has increased or decreased the fertilizer application in the national level. We use a combination of long-parametric and parametric estimation. In the long-parametric part, first, we relaxing assumption of linearity. We use model 1, generalize the additive model to show the actual response of fertilizer application. Then, based on the nonlinear results of model 1, a segmented region model is used to find the exact threshold. Finally, we apply fixed effect to experimental estimation for the approximately linearly part identified by the model 1, limited by the time available. I will not go into detail on that. So our data mainly contains climate data and agriculture data. Agriculture data covers annual records on more than 2,000 counties from 1998 to 2016 and includes 9 crops: rice, wheat, corn, soybean, sugar, oil, contour, potato, and vegetable fruits. By relaxing assumption of linearity, we use data-driven function to deal with the relationships between climate factors and fertilizer application. The red line represents the effect of temperature on fertilizer application, and the blue line represents precipitation. The green area represents the confidence interval. As you can see from the figure, there are nonlinear relationship between climate change and fertilizer application, especially the acceptance of threshold effect.
Hey, Chen, could you please wrap up in 1 to 2 minutes?
I tried my best.
Okay, yeah, please.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, we know that there is a threshold effect of climate change on fertilizer, and what's the threshold value? We refer to Bonnie and Sklinker's approach in 2019. We use significant regression model to find the exact threshold based on the nonlinear results of model 1. Please look at this picture. The red dot represents the threshold value, and the red line represents the area above the threshold. The temperature threshold is 21 degrees, and by the same token, the threshold of precipitation is 11.7 centimeters. Until now, we still don't know how many kilograms of fertilizer will be increased for each 1 degree rising. Since the part above censured is approximately nearly, can we try to estimate coefficients? So we use factored effect model. This table clearly shows the results. The first column is the basic result as 21 degrees and above, 1 degree increase of growing days of the over season, fertilizer increase 1.61%, and at 11.7 centimeters and above, fertilizer decrease 0.05%. Further, we present several sensitivity checks to ensure that our results are driven by climate change.
Hey,
As you
Chen,
can see-
please wrap up in a few sentences. We are really like running out of time right now. Thank you.
Yes. And we did the heterogeneously and analyze based on the different fertilizer types, and that's the conclusion. With overall, climate change affect not only crop yields but also agricultural inputs. We should consider climate change into fertilizer use policy. And that's the end of my presentation. Any comment or advice is worthily welcome. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Chen. So, any questions from the audience? Please.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for the next presentation. And I have a question about so if we consider the climate change will be worse for the production, maybe they will have the two channels to influence the fertilizer. The first thing that I need to use more fertilizer in order to keep the yield. Another thing that I will just leave the agriculture to the other area to reduce the fertilizer use. So I want to use some idea about which channel will play the role in the results that you show from your regression model. Thanks.
Chen, did you hear the question clearly?
I didn't catch that.
Okay,
clearly.
Jen's, yeah, I will repeat the question for you. So Jen's question is, the climate has two channels influencing the production. One is, could you remind me the two channels?
Oh yeah, the first thing that so I need to use more fertilizer to keep the same yield. Another thing that so maybe I will just quit the farming and that will reduce less use of fertilizer.
So the first channel is to keep the yield, you have to use more fertilizer. And
and the second is,
and then the second channel is
second channel is that so if the yield is difficult to increase, maybe I will just quit the farming so that both the product and yield will both product and the fertilizer use will decrease.
Okay, so the second channel is if the yield is too hard to improve, then the farmers can choose to quit farming. Then both production and yield will drop significantly. So
yes. So I wonder which channel plays the major role based on this result or based on for understanding about the mechanism.
Okay, so based on your results, which channel plays a bigger role in your model in understanding this question?
Yes, and thanks for your question. And our work actually discussing whether climate change is decreasing or increasing at the national level. So our results shows that temperature would increase fertilizer application and precipitation maybe decrease the fertilizer application. We didn't discuss we have added the economic variable to control the social variable, economic variable, but we didn't discuss too much about the farmers' decision input. So thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your great presentation. Let's move on to our next presenter. We have Yuze Wang from Huazhong Agricultural University. So Yuze, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Could you please share your slides?
Okay, I will share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, my name is can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, let's begin. It's my great honor to be here to share my research, and my paper we'll present today is the health impact of two policies regulating sulfur dioxide air pollution, the evidence from China. And my presentation consists of 6 parts. First one is the motivation. We all know that during the 40 years of reform and warming up of China has reached a rapid industrialization, and at the same time, under the coal-based energy structure, the air pollution, especially the sulfur dioxide emissions, has increased rapidly. And let's look at the figure 1. We can see that the time rate of sulfur dioxide and the air pollution related disease, they are very similarly. So the air pollution poses a very serious threat to the public health. Then, in order to reduce the pollution, the Chinese government has implemented the common controlled environmental regulation as well as the market-oriented environmental regulations. So I want to know that what the health effect of this environmental regulation. And throughout the literature, I found the environmental regulation in developing countries are relatively weak, and the health effect of the regulation is scarce. So my research question is, what are the health impacts of the environmental regulation? And there are 3 small questions here. First one is, which forms of regulation has been more effective? Second one is whether the short-term and long-term effects differ. And third one is whether and how the policy impacts different between different populations or between different regions. And this paper will employ the DID model to do the health impact of 2 policies combating sulfur dioxide air pollution. First one is a 2 control zone policy. It's a kind of command controlled policy. And second one is the sulfur dioxide emission trade scheme. It's a kind of market-oriented policy. And the data is from the CHNS. There was the previews of our findings. Firstly, we found the different policy have different effect. For example, the two control zone policy can reduce the 4-week prevalence of air pollution-related disease, but the emission trade scheme have no positive health effect. Secondly, the health effect of two control zones is most pronounced for respiratory illness, and its increasing in the light of the policy has been implemented. A second one is the positive health impact is stronger for the older workers, less educated workers, and lower income workers. And the last one is the eastern region and the urban areas, especially the rural hukou holders living in the urban areas. They can benefit more from the regulations. And there may be some contributions of our paper. First one is we can see the existing evidence has examined the command-controlled environmental regulations. And our study also deal with the impact of the market-oriented policies and aim at comparing their impacts. And then we found the early study often have focused on the mortality, especially the infant mortality. And our study provides the evidence on the air pollution-related disease. And last one is we use the longitudinal information to examine the difference over time, as well as the difference between different air pollution related disease, different populations and regions. Then let me introduce the policies in our study. We can see from the figure 1 is the timeline of the two policy. The two control zone policy issued in 1998, and the short-term goal is set for 2000, and long-term goal is set for 2010. And since 2010, there's no new goal, so we think the policy is ended in the 2010. And in 2003, the emission trade scheme issued. And from the picture 3 and the picture 4, we can see the distribution of the two kinds of policies. And in these pictures, the ones in the dark blue is some prefectures or province in our regulations, and the shaded one is the province in the CHNS database. Then let me introduce the data. The data is from CHNS, and we have eight surveys from 1993 to 2050. And there are also some data we obtained from the China City Statistical Yearbooks and so on. The most important variable in our study is the individual health, that is the air pollution-related disease. It takes on the value of 1 if the respondent has been sick during the 4 weeks preceding the interview and is diagnosed by a doctor with one of the air pollution-related disease. And this disease includes the respiratory disease, heart disease, the cancer, and the mental or neurological disease. Otherwise, the value is 0. And the two picture is the province of the 4 kinds of air pollution-related disease and their time trend. Then is the summary statistics.
Itzel, could you please wrap up in 1 minute?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I will try my best.
Just try your best. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, the model in our research is the DID model, and there are some empirical results here. We can see the policy, two control zone policy, can reduce the 4-week prevalence of air pollution-related disease, but at the same time, the emission trade scheme, they have no significant effect. And we can see here and here, the interaction between the two kinds of policy is not significant. And then we carry out a series of tests. For example, the parallel trade test. We employ even the study to do the test. And we also control for the pre-existing trade. Then we did some counterfactual tests, a series of robustness tests, and we try to study the influence channels. And we found that the two control zone policy, it can reduce the sulfur dioxide, and at the same time, it can reduce some other pollutants, such as the industrial fumes. And at the same time, the policy can increase the time spent in the physical exercise, so it can promote the public health. Then we did some discussion about why is there no health effect of the emission trade policy. And then we did some further research based on the different diseases in different periods, based on the different population groups and across different regions. Okay, that's all my, that's all, thank you.
Thank you, Yuze. Do we have any questions from the audience, comments, feedback? All right, we can move on to our next presenter, Sihan Liu from Nanjing Agricultural University. So,
I will show my screen. Can you see my screen?
yes, we can.
Okay.
So, Sihan, you have 7 minutes. And I'll
Okay.
remind you when there are like 1 minute left. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
Please.
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to share my academic ideas and questions here with you. I am Lü Sihan, a doctor from Nanjing Agricultural University. Today, the subject of my presentation is industrial pollution and wheat productivity, evidence from thermal power plant in North China. My report is mainly divided into 5 parts. The first part is background and research questions. At the world's main wheat producing countries, China producing nearly 18% of wheat in the world. Winter wheat contributes to the main output of wheat in China. Moreover, wheat is the primary food in North China. Wheat accounts for nearly 20% of the national wheat supply. This figure displays that wheat yield has increased by 25% in the last 2 decades in this region. China is also the largest coal producer and consumer in the world. The installed capacity of thermal power plant has increased due to the increased demand for electricity. The energy mix of North China, the central coal producing region, is even more dependent on coal use. Coal is the main energy source for thermal power plants, which drives the power sector to be a principal contributor to air pollutants, which widely diffused and highly concentrated in rural areas. As shown in panel A, thermal power plants are concentrated mainly in North China. Almost every county has at least 1 thermal power plant. The panel B shows that the number of thermal power plants in North China is growing at a decreasing rate. As we all know, to cope with the cold weather, a rigid demand for coal in North China is observed for heating. We found that the critical wheat growing season overlaps with the peak period of thermal power generation. Therefore, given the high compatibility between the wheat growing season and the peak period of thermal power generation in China. We intend to investigate whether this coincidence can affect wheat growth and result in yield reduction. Existing studies assess the hazards of air pollution. For example, human capital, culture, heritage sites, food price, plant health. Nevertheless, the impact of air pollutants on crop yields have been primarily documented in biological studies. However, only a few economic studies have measured the field impacts of air pollution on crop yields. Based on the research background, we put forward research questions. How sensitive is the wheat yield with respect to thermal power plants during the wheat growing season? Is air pollution a channel through which thermal power plants affect wheat yield? First, we put the following econometric model to identify the influence of thermal power plants on wheat yield. Power plants represent the total number of thermal power plants with 15 kilometers from the county center. We also control other weather events. Furthermore, the ecology driven by the self-selection of the thermal power plant is a major concern. We use the distribution of thermal power plants on the basis of interdirection. So we rewrite equation 1 as follows. Upwind and downwind represents the number of thermal power plants located in the upwind and downwind direction. Here is a diagram of wheat direction and orientation of the thermal power plant. Assuming that the dominant wind direction for this county is northeast, we call the plant located in the dark gray as upwind and the one in the light gray region as downwind. We obtained agriculture data from the CAS and the climate data obtained from the China Material Data Sharing Service System and the county level air pollution data obtained from the NASA. Here are the explanation results. First, we provide an event study design to better capture the dynamics of the treatment effect by using new constructions. This figure shows that the coefficients are not significant from zero during the pre-construction period. And the wheat yield was affected in the second year after new plants were built. Nonetheless, the event study only provides prima-facie evidence, and we cannot identify the marginal effect of the thermal power plants on wheat yields. So here are the baseline results. Column 1 and 2 in table 1 present the estimation based on equation 1. We do not find the significant effect of thermal power plant on wheat yield. The rest results based on equation 2, which indicates that upwind thermal power plants have significant negative effects on wheat yield. However, the downwind thermal power plants are close to zero and not significant.
Sihan, please wrap up in 1 minute. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We further provide a series response chart for our previous finding. First, we change our reduce and angles. This result is consistent with the finding that no longer the distance airplane transport, the greater of the contains, the lower obtains, and the less harm they will cause. Furthermore, to address the issues that local environment regulations may respond to the emission of thermal power plant, we use the number of plants in the neighboring county. And then we conduct a distributed count number of thermal power plants that a plant further away from the county center receives a small weight. And furthermore, we remove the counties in which of the wind direction blows one dominated direction. At last, we attempt to use the diffusion areas. We further conduct a set of heterogeneous analysis because the vast difference across regions. Given that thermal power plant affect weight yield, we further invested channels. However, we do not have the record of plants emitted from thermal power plant, so we rely on satellite imagery, which contains daily air plants. This imagery model for this chemistry is similar to the model in equation 2. Expect that the dependent variable becomes for critical air plants. The results are shown in this table. The upwind thermal power plant have greater effect on air plants than downwind plants. So we have three conclusions. Thermal power plants are one of the major source of air pollution. An additional upwind thermal power plant result in 1% reduction in weight yield. The principal driver of weight yield losses is likely the air plants from thermal power plant. That's all. That's all for my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Sihan. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for your brief. I have a quick question about, so do you consider other factors that may influence the yield to be used as control, for example, the water use and fertilizer use? Thanks.
So we have a question from Jen Wang. His question is, do you consider other factors, for example,
Water use and fertilizer use.
water use, fertilizer use as the control variable in your model, right? Yes.
Thanks for your question. Yeah, I will, in our econometric model, I will consider some econometrical, such as economic, I see.
All right. Thank you, Sihan. Thank you for sharing your research with us. Okay, then let's welcome our next speaker, Professor Song-Qing Jin from Michigan State University.
Thank you. 7 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, do you want a timer or you are good?
Oh, where's my slide? Yeah, give me a timer.
Okay. This is Jen, yeah.
I think this is covered by the small screen. So if you just remove small screen, will contact.
This one?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, okay. I'm not the original speaker for this paper. And my collaborator just emailed me, say, hey, I worked too much time on the presentation. Now it's midnight already. I gotta wake up for.
Okay.
Okay, and good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so this paper is a joint paper with Dr. Guo Jiexin and some of his colleagues from Beijing Academy of Agriculture and Forest Institute. Okay, so this is about COVID and how does COVID shift the from the in-person shopping to the online shopping, basically, right?
Do a full screen share.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Okay, so the title of the presentation has COVID-19 really accelerated the e-commerce of agriculture products. Okay, so as we know, okay, so I will do very quickly. Okay, probably not follow everything, but I will try. Okay, so first of all, I think COVID really has disrupted our food supply chain, right? And then e-commerce can improve, first of all, market performance, but same time, really in this context, really avoid direct person-to-person contact. Right? So it's regarded as an effective way to substitute for the offline market, food market channel, right? And so then the question is whether this have COVID-19 and its control measures really accelerate the e-commerce of food and agriculture products, and also has the acceleration varies by the operational scale and also other characteristics of e-stores. Right? Okay, so some of the background I probably just skip. Okay, I think now I saw the other presenter. So we directly go to the data. Okay, so we have data from 146 or 64,000 registered e-stores in 15 provinces, right? From Taobao, the Alibaba, one of the main e-store, and also from Jingdong. So and this covered from I think you can see the distribution, right? And so it's more than 40% of all the e-stores in China specialized in food products, right? So the data is quite deep, really is provided by online data firm. Okay, so aggregate everything. Really, is daily transaction of the store. Sell agricultural products and food, right? A lot of food items, and they have the store ID and sales volume and quantity and customer order and also okay, sorry time. Okay, so the key variables. Okay, one of the variables is we look at the monthly sales. So already aggregate at the monthly level from daily to monthly, and we only have accessible to only have access to this monthly data, right? And then we look at also have the quantity of customers' orders, right? So allow us to look at the mechanism a little bit, whether it's which, and then also look at the unit price per customer order. So it's not a price of the product, but it's a unit price of that per order, right? So kind of both of them is more from the consumer expansion side. Okay, you can think of that, and then all these some of the control variable. We look at the literature and try to construct. I skip. Okay, and then here are some of the quick descriptives. Focus on the first three. Okay, so the first three we look at the sale increase by almost 40%. Okay, so this for the first 6 months after the COVID, okay? So we don't have the long time that will, in the end, if I have any time, we see limitation of that study, okay? And then we look at the order increased by 25%, and depends which look at. And so first we look at the treatment, we look control, and then in the end, it's really difference in difference, okay? So we can see 71% increase in the sale, and then increase in the order, and also increase in the unit price, right? So the DID, now we have seen a few papers on this, so similar. The only thing is I want to emphasize the DID is a little bit out of the norm. You can think the treatment is not really, it is more on the time dimension, okay? So we start 6 months before the pandemic and 6 months after, that whole year as a treatment. And then we have 2 previous years for the same time period according to the Chinese calendar, because the COVID happened almost the same time as the New Year, right? So with that comparison kind of control the seasonal effect, the New Year's effect, and all that, many of the other papers have done it. Like we have done a paper in AAEA use similar strategy. In one of the versions, use DID. Or that paper is more on the discontinuity, but here is more DID. Right? And then we also look at the dynamic, like because that allows us to look at the trend. Okay, quickly. Okay, I just know it's time. So really, here is the key, the outcome, like increase order. So this is the main variable of the not the order. The total sale increase almost doubled. Okay, in the first 6 months. Okay, and then we look at the month by month. This is the dynamic, and then we see most of the first. Actually, look, the picture probably is better. Okay, so only 1 month, one of the pre-COVID months kind of a little significant, but actually on the other side. Okay, so then you can see it's all increased quite. And then we look at some heterogeneous effect. So we look at actually the smaller firms, they gain more than really the micro firm really gain a lot than the larger firm, okay? And then we have some other, some of the fresh food increase much more than some the other, and also if for leisure, like just and this are not really needed food, you will see less effect. Okay, so these are kind of as expected. And then we look at the mechanism, and then we will see. We include the first of all, we see the sale has a very significant is very significantly related to the order, okay, and also very related to the unit price of per order. And then we include both of them. We see the effect reduced almost from double to almost to only 10%. So most of these are explained by these two variables, the order and also the unit. Basically, it means not only more customers join online market, but also they tend to buy more goods at once. Okay, so this more confirms the consumer side of story rather than the disruption of the production side. Although we only have store data, so it's a little difficult to look at everything, but at least some hint, right? So and then we look at exits, we have less. Exit is much actually slower, and then has more entry. So less entry, but more exit also. Okay, so that it was some disruption, so new formation, and that is, but altogether, since so there is some contradictory effect, right? So you see the consumers increase, but then you see the store itself, the numbers
antithetical
reduce a little. Oh, okay. Okay, so I almost done. Okay, so I think I really just want to highlight, right? So this the e-commerce it has put a lot of I didn't even look at it, policy implication. But it really is highlight the importance of e-commerce in this very difficult time, how to maintain the supply chain, right? And also help the food security. Okay, so we actually done another paper in parallel to this paper on the input side. Okay, fertilizer, seed, and also very similar stories. Very interesting. Okay, both people now. Actually, just revise and submit. So it's somewhere. Okay. Okay. So I stop here. If you have any questions. Yes.
What is your treatment?
So the treatment is COVID. The COVID related that year we call the treatment, right? So. So if we have a treatment and we have before and after, if you think about DID, right, in the more canonical sense, right? So we must have a treatment, we must have control. So in this case, the treatment actually is more temporal rather than spatial, different unit, right? So just we still have the panel data, Okay, so we have the all for the same e-store, but we have the COVID period. So we can divide the period by the New Year, Chinese New Year, okay, before the New Year and after New Year. So before COVID, 6 months, after 6 months, 6 months. So for that year, we have before and we have after. So before means, if we think about February, so January, December, November, October, September. From September to December, that period we call the before COVID come, okay? And then we have after COVID nearly until June of 2020, right? And then we have, so this whole thing we call the treatment, but we have before and after. Then we have the same thing for the last 2 years, 1998 to 2018 to 2019. And we also have before and after, the same time comparison. Okay, so the Chinese New Year, before New Year, after New Year. And then we have 2 years as control, right? And then really if we compare in the COVID year, the change in the sale and compare the non-COVID year of change of sale across the month. And that's the difference in this one. Right? Is that clear?
I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
So how do you deal with the counterfactual? Like how do you make sure that you can assume that during the COVID period, that's your treatment, and the trend is the same for the control group? Like the counterfactual effect, can you explain like how do you make sure the parallel trend, all the assumptions for DID is?
Yeah, so in 2018 to 19 or 17 to 18, right? For the same period comparison, you don't see any difference. Okay, so you have 17 to 18 and 18 to 19 for that same before New Year, after New Year comparison. For these 2 years, we don't see, but still could have some change because of year difference. Okay, definitely 2022 maybe is very different from the other 2 years, right? But that you don't see, and that's why I have that we have before and after, and then we see. Yes, still there's something, okay, but if you do not expect that and I mean, in absence of COVID, what do you expect that is so different from 17 to 18 and 18 to 19? We do not see a very dramatic shift in the e-commerce. They have continuously, like progressively increased every year. So the year effect we can still control, but months. We also compare month to month, so it's more like a seasonal effect is also controlled, right, in a sense, right? So, yeah, but it's always when you have the time dimension of ID, you have to think a little more. Yes.
Yeah, I also have a question. So I wonder why don't you consider to use locating estimate and control group, for example, in Hubei or other?
That in the heterogeneity effect, we have done that, right? Yeah.
Because the lockdown policy is not like.
Yeah, the lockdown in that after the publicly announced the person-to-person, human-to-human transmission, and then almost entire country lockdown, right? So it's difficult. But then we look at intensity. The Hubei and other places is a little different. Okay, so look at it. Yes.
Did you look at it was a really nice research question, really like it. Did you also look at the reason for why stores, e-commerce stores were exiting? Because intuitively it doesn't make sense. If the demand is right and everything is lockdown, shouldn't the stores be eating? Or were they just some of the stores got really big?
Actually, we see the small store benefit, the really micro store benefit, and then some of the large store, they're still there. Yeah, so actually that I have to check. Good question. Means whether which store exit, right? Small exit, big store. But I think it's one of the reasons why, because there is also disruption of all the things shut down. You know, the traffic. If for some store they do not have some Yeah, they don't have the inventory and they need something, couldn't get it. Maybe, yeah. Actually, a lot of things still can look at how from the industrial structuring point of view, can look at how we have now it's more like just overall the picture, see whether it would be really nice if we also have the physical store, you know, but then I think some other study have done it. Okay. Yeah.
We can have like one more question. Please.
Okay.
Question about the data.
Yeah.
So, do you specific sales data for like categories of agricultural product or entirely
Yes, many of them are aggregated here. So actually it has very detailed. So it's very specialized. They have the fresh vegetable, right? Actually, dairy product, I don't know. Actually, I tried to check with my collaborator. He told me it's difficult. Probably is not one of the focus here, but more on the regular, the canned food, and then fresh food. So quite a number of categories here, and also some of them just for not essential food. Okay, so maybe candy, you know, and you can also here, but you see very little effect on this food, but more on the fresh produce, on other more needed food, right? Yeah.
It's a great discussion. Thank you.
That's the benefit of being in person.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. So our next speaker is Zhang Wang from Purdue University. Let's welcome Zhang Wang. And
I think maybe we just stop sharing, open that. So I was sharing the whole screen or just the presentation.
yeah, you can.
Okay, is it the whole screen sharing?
No, not yet.
Okay. View. Yeah.
Full screen.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have any question from the Zoom. Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Operator.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zhang from Purdue University. Today, we are glad to present our work on the China South to North Water Transfer Project, or in short for SNWTP, and its impact on the food and water system. Okay, yeah. So just to provide some brief background. So SNWTP contains the three routes that linking the Yangtze River and the Yellow River. And what we can see from here, the amount of water transferred has been increasing since 2015. So the designed water transfer capacity of SNWTP is equivalent to 19% of the total water use for the 5 water receiving basins. And the maximum capacity will go to over 30%. So that indicates the importance of SNWTP in water balance. So existing literature have researched the impact of SNWTP, but they mainly focus on the hydrological and environmental aspects. On the other side, the impact of SNWTP on agriculture is still insufficiently researched, especially on the economic linkage between water and other inputs, the spillover effect, the interaction between agriculture and the environment, and the spatial heterogeneity in its impact. So in this research, we researched SNWTP with the Simple J China model. The Simple J China is a partial equilibrium model that's focused on the crop production in China. So we downscaled the whole China into over 80,000 grids in order to capture the spatial features. And on the other side, we aggregated the rest of the world into 15 regions in order to capture the macro level drivers. And we conducted 3 simulations. In the first simulation,
we consider scenarios that with and without SNWTP in the baseline year of 2017 and use this model to simulate the response in cost, input, and output. And furthermore, we use the social economic drivers as well as the nature driver to project the model to 2050 and then consider 3 scenarios. If SNWTP operates at the design capacity of its first stage, if it operates at the maximum capacity, or if there's no SNWTP, and then compare their response. So first of all, let's look at some of the direct effects from SNWTP. So as we can see here, from all 3 simulations, we find SNWTP has to decrease the irrigation cost for the water receiving basins. Especially in the year of 2017, we see the basin 75 has the largest reduction. This is because it contains the Beijing and Tianjin, which is the top priority of our current water transfer plan. But for the other basins, they will benefit more as the SNWTP continues. And then because of the reduction of the irrigation cost, the water receiving basins will also have increased in their irrigation water use. That is shown on the left figure. And because of that, it will have 2 indirect effects on the other input. The first is the substitution between the water use and another use. Another is that the scale effect, that the reduction in the cost boosts the production, so that will increase the use of all inputs. So based on our simulation, we find that here the scale effect dominates the substitution effect, that the water receiving basins will also have higher use of their cropland and fertilizer. And consistent with the result on the input level, we also find that the water receiving basins will have more of the crop output, and the magnitude of that effect will be greater as the more water is transferred from SNWTP. Furthermore, we find another interesting finding is that for the other basins that are not directly located on the route of SNWTP, they also have a decrease of their water use. That shows the spillover effect of SNWTP is that the water receiving basins, they track more of the mobile input and influence the overall pattern of crop output for the whole time. So finally, let's look at the impact of crop output, but now on the spatial level. So from here, we can find that the impact of SNWTP is not uniform within each of the basins, but they show the variance at the grid level. So again, that indicates the importance to consider the spatial heterogeneity of the impact using a model that shows on the fine scale. So as the concluding remark, this study provides us the 3 implications. The first is that it is important to research the impact of SNWTP with an economic framework that can capture the indirect effect between input use and also the spillover effect to other regions. So second, even if we know that SNWTP can help us to relieve the water shortage in the water receiving basin, but it will also raise the use of cropland and also result in the higher fertilizer use that will both be bad for the environment. So again, the interaction between our culture and the environment requires further research. And the last but not least, here, based on the spatial heterogeneity of the impact of SNWTP, it emphasizes the value to conduct more of the targeted research and policy making in order to deal with the local level effect. So thank you very much. So I know it's a very short time, but if you're interested in our work, please let me know. And now I'm happy to take any questions.
Clarification.
Yeah.
So the model is not targeted only for a certain purpose use.
Yes.
And use for any.
Yes. So here we use this model in order to work on the applications of SNWTP, but basically it can be used for any other shocks that are associated with the crop demand and crop supply. Yes.
So you based on the other parameter of the crop pattern change.
Yes.
All right. Seems like, that's all the questions. Thank you, Jen.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right. So we are back to Zoom, and our next speaker is Miao Li from Huazhong Agricultural University. So Miao, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Okay, yeah, you have 7 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Please
Thank you.
start, yeah.
Good. Hello, everyone. I'm Miao Li, a PhD student from Huazhong Agricultural University. It's my honor to have this opportunity to share my paper here. The title is Market Makers, Market Quality and Price Discovery, New Evidence from Chinese Commodity Futures Markets. My presentation is divided into the following 6 sections. First is an introduction. Chinese commodity futures markets have shows an impressive development. According to the CFA, the trading values and the trading volume and the trading value of China's total commodity futures were up to 6 billion contracts and 400 trillion CNY. China also has gradually opened futures trading to global investors rather than prohibiting direct participation of foreign investment as in the past. However, while actually actively traded, Chinese commodity futures markets have long suffered from the discontinuous activeness of nearby contracts. That is, unlike in the United States, nearby contracts are always the most active. In China, certain contracts expiring in January, May, and September are the so-called dominant contracts with the most trading volume. Figure 1 displays the trading volume of Chinese corn, soybean meal, and iron ore futures contracts of different maturity months before introducing market makers, and the U.S. corn futures contracts of different maturity months in 2017. For all 3 commodity futures in China, the trading volumes of dominant contracts expiring in January, May, and September are much higher than the remaining contracts. However, the number of traded contracts for the inactive contracts shows similar clustering around 0. The trading volumes of U.S. corn futures, in contrast, are relatively more dispersed and of smaller disparity among contracts with different maturities. Moreover, in Chinese commodity futures markets, nearby contracts account for only 10% of the total volume. To address these challenges, in 2017, Chinese exchanges started recruiting market makers to improve market quality and facilitate a better price discovery function to when the inactive contracts become the current nearby contracts. However, current research on the role of market makers in commodity futures market is scarce, which motivates us to study the role of market makers in Chinese commodity futures markets. In this paper, we employ a difference-in-difference approach to examine the performance of China's market-making program. We aim to answer the following questions. First, does recruiting market makers improve the market quality and price discovery function of the inactive contracts? Second, what are the potential channels for the market makers' impacts on market quality and the price discovery? And last, what are the heterogeneous effects of different market making settings on market quality and price discovery? The second part introduced the background information. We first describe the market making programs in China. First, market making services started on December 1st, 2017 for corn, soybean meal, and iron ore futures. The DCE recruited 10, and 9 companies as market makers for corn, soybean meal, and iron ore futures. Then in 2019, the DCE added 5 more companies for corn and soybean meal futures and 6 more companies for iron ore futures. Secondly, the DCE website shows market makers' rights, including commission reduction and obligations, including bilateral quotation and minimum position. Last, the DCE also reveals information about switching the current market-making contract to the next among the inactive contracts. Generally, the inactive contracts have market makers when they become the current nearby contract. Table 1 should, to clarify this idea, Table 1 displays the market-making contracts in each month of the year. For example, March iron ore futures contracts becomes the market-making contracts in December of the previous year. Because there are more inactive contracts for the soybean meal and iron ore futures than for corn, the settings of market-making contracts are different in some ways. For example, each inactive contract of corn and iron ore futures becomes the market-making contract for 4 and 2 months. In contrast, contracts of soybean meal futures become market-making contracts for 4 or 3 months. In addition, market-making months for inactive contracts of soybean meal and iron ore futures could overlap. The next part introduces the theoretical framework. Generally, we expect that market makers improve market quality by reducing order imbalance and enhance price discovery function by improving market quality. We use tick data from September to 2017 to December 2019 of corn, soybean meal, and iron ore futures. We measure market quality from 3 aspects, including market activity, liquidity, and volatility. We also measure price discovery by calculating the contribution of inactive contracts to the price discovery process relative to the continuous dominant contracts. Based on the switching information, in Table 1, we define each of our treated units as a pre-treatment period of 3 months before it has market makers and a post-treatment period of 2 to 4 months when it has market makers, as shown in Figure 2.
Miao, could you please wrap up, like in a few sentences?
So we just go to the empirical results. This table displays the main results of the DID approach. We only present results of the DID approach for measurements that fulfill the parallel trend assumption. The coefficient of interest here is the interaction term MM. As anticipated, the presence of market makers significantly improves the market quality of 3 commodity futures. Inactive contracts of corn and iron ore futures perform better price discovery function with market makers, though the improvement is somehow slight. Then we employ a 3-step mediating effect to determine how market makers impact the market quality and the price discovery. The first table verifies that market makers lower transaction cost by reducing order imbalance. And the second table confirms that the market makers stabilize price by reducing order imbalance. We also verify the channel for improvement in price discovery for corn, not for iron ore, because it fails in the second step. As the main results suggest that price discovery contributions increase and the market quality improves. So it fulfills the first step and the second step. We only presented results for the third step here. The results also support that after adding market makers, market activity increased and the transaction cost decrease, leading to better price discovery functions. Next, we also examine.
Could you please just like go to the conclusion and just wrap up real quick?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. To conclude, our results shows that inactive contracts of Chinese corn, soybean, and iron ore futures generally shows better market quality and price discovery function after recruiting market makers. And second, after recruiting market makers, order imbalance in inactive contracts decreased significantly, thus lowering the spread and decreasing price volatility. Thirdly, trading volume increased and the transaction cost decreased significantly because of market makers, so leading to better price discovery function. Lastly, more market makers can improve the inactive contracts market quality, especially for iron ore futures. Meanwhile, the design of overlapped market making months is essential to improve market quality and price discovery function for iron ore futures with 9 inactive contracts. In contrast, this doesn't apply to soybean meal futures because overlapped market making contracts with longer duration of market makers price, this could harm liquidity. That's all for my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mia. Due to the time limit, I think we have to move on to the next speaker. So let's welcome Xiaoxi Wang from Zhejiang University.
Good afternoon, everyone. Morning here.
Hi.
Thanks. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. And you can see the screen, right?
Yes, we can see it. Please keep in mind that you have 7 minutes.
Sure.
Thank
7
you.
minutes. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
okay.
All right. Thanks for having me. I'm Xiaoxi, a junior professor at Zhejiang University and a senior researcher at Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. Today, I'm going to talk about part of our ongoing research project, Reform China's fertilizer policies and its implications for the environment and food security. So, some background information. We all know that China uses the largest amount of fertilizers in the world, and also especially for the nitrogen fertilizer, around more than 33% of global fertilizer. And well, it's we see that actually it's kind of reducing after 2015 due to some policies. That's what we are going to investigate. And why Reform China's fertilizer policy matters, because 7% of the total GHG emissions in the country comes from the agriculture sector, and 60% of the nitric oxide is coming from the agriculture sector due to the nitrogen fertilizer use. And also there's a zero growth action plan in China. So it mainly focuses on the fertilizer manufacturer subsidy removal and also improving the nitrogen use efficiency while using more organic fertilizer such as manure to replace the inorganic fertilizer use. That's a 3 main pillar we're going to investigate in our study. So this is just some background about the fertilizer manufacturing subsidy in 2010, and it was gradually removed. So ideally, it should influence the fertilizer price a little bit. So the fundamental research question are the impacts of the reforming fertilizer policies on environment and the food securities. And we can see the three channels. The first, the fertilizer manufacturing subsidy removal. It is expected to increase the nitrogen fertilizer use, and also due to the zero growth action plan, the SNUP should increase. And we use the difference in differences model in combination with some household survey data to estimate this impact, and then combined with the unbalanced approach. The third one is animal waste management. So it should affect the manure recycle to soil, sorry. And these are just the DID estimates of the policy impacts on the fertilizer use and on the crop yields. And then we somehow get into the use some tricks to estimate the nitrogen use efficiencies. And then we develop three scenarios, the counterfactual as usual and the policy as usual, thanks to the DID estimates. And then we construct hypothetical scenarios called ambitious scenarios, encompassing three dimensions, the NUP, the SNUP, and the manure recycle to soil, and also the fertilizer prices. Well, also we consider the emission costs. Then we use a spatial explicit agroeconomic land system model. I saw some Voodoo colleagues are using simple G. So in principle, it's very similar. It's a partial equilibrium model. It looks like a complex systems. So we have the objective functions and accounts of the constraints and the variables. Okay. And well, the countries are aggregated to 12 regions, but well, it's a really level model. So on the right-hand side, you can see the subnational spatial level in MyPy China. So the model is called MyPy China, and the quality has been verified. We have used a model, published papers in high-ranking journals, and also contributed to the IPCC AR5 and AR6 assessment reports. So some results, I will mainly focus on the first two, the impacts on the N pollutions and fertilizer use, and also the food prices. Okay, and these are the impacts on the reduction in fertilizer use in policy scenarios. And I guess for economists, the most interesting one is the CAU, the counterfactual as usual, and the policy as usual. We use parameters estimated from DID, and we see that any reduction in PAU relative to CAU scenarios in 2030 and 2060, well, which are the critical time points due to China policies, and we see that around 13 megaton of nitrogen can be reduced. And then we further investigate into the individual measures, and we see, okay, the most effective one is to increasing the soil nitrogen use efficiency, while the subsidy removal the impact is very marginal. And then it's very natural to take a further step to look into the nitrogen surplus, okay, and then we compare the results with the planetary boundary, which is orange dash line, showing here the 26 megaton of the nitrogen. And we see that with the current policy reform, it's sufficient in the long run to keep the nitrogen surplus below the planetary boundary. And then we look at the different nitrogen pollution types, like the N2O, which is a very important part of the GHG emissions in the agriculture sector, but also the ammonia and the NOx and the nitrogen, which affects the air quality and water quality. Okay. And well, we also look at the economic impacts, including the food prices matrix and also the food self-sufficiency and productivity. And we see that there's a really marginal repercussion of food prices in PAU. But well, in the ambition scenarios, we see that there will be a 38% increase due to the nitrogen taxation in the ambition scenario in 2060 and around 23% for livestock. And the food self-sufficiency is slightly decreased due to the taxation, which is implemented as a nitrogen emission costs. Okay, and for the sake of the time, I will just not show go to the detail into the productivity. Okay, and that will be the final slides. I will make some wrap up. So reform China's fertilizer policy in the short and long run contributes to reducing the nitrogen fertilizer and the surplus, and of course reducing the N2O emissions, which is quite critical for the climate neutrality target in 2060. And it has very marginal negative impacts on food security thanks to the improving the nitrogen use efficiency. And if some ambitious measures are introduced, such as a nitrogen tax, it could drive up the food prices. Yeah, that's all. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you for the very interesting speech, and also I'm interested in your model. So I have a question about I see you also have the rest of world aggregated, and I wonder how do you model the impact from the other regions to China in your model?
So we have, okay.
Yeah.
You heard it, right?
No, I didn't hear clearly.
Okay. So we have a question from Zhang Wang from Purdue University. His question is, how do you model
impact from the rest of world to China?
The impact from the rest of the world to China
in this model? Yeah.
In this model.
Well, yeah, I guess it's very similar to what you did in CPOG. So for the other countries, we keep it as as business as usual. So basically, there will be no policy reform in other countries. So other countries just follow the path of the BAU, and we only focus on the policies. Well, the policies is in China and the impacts on China. But of course, there's interactions between countries due to international trade. So this is captured by the model. Yeah. So we have the trade. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer. And thank you for your great presentation. And we are going to have our last presenter, Yuhang Zhang from Peking University. Let's welcome Yuhang. Is Yuhang here? Yes. Oh, sorry, did I mispronounce your name? It's Hang Yu, right?
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Screen.
Okay. Yeah, we can see your slides, and you can start any minute, and you have 7 minutes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Hangyu Zhang, a doctor from Peking University. I want to present physical capacity, climatic shocks, and social unrest in the heyday of Qing Dynasty. It is a historical article. Social unrest and climate shocks, there are many papers talking about this. The existing literature has well documented that climatic shocks are recognized as causal mechanism between economic shocks. Due to the monsoon climate in China, the unpredictable droughts and floods occurred throughout the history. If food shortage could not be timely solved and famine spread the worst case, starving people might gather and the social unrest arise. To talk about physical capacity, state with a centralized bureaucracy controls a significant share of national output through the effective tax system to justify its physical capacity. Levying agricultural tax, one of the most important revenue, could provoke social unrest or conflicts over the appropriation of the commodity itself in the form of looting deals. Qing adopted agricultural tax by the Ming Dynasty. The Qing central government also adopted a classification of prefectures proposed by agricultural tax by the Ming Dynasty. You can see from the Baiyin in his JDE. If the agricultural tax passed the threshold of 500,000 picos, the prefecture will classify it as important. The important area may have more political results, such as more quotas and more officers, hence more physical capacity. The results remain stable until the Taiping Rebellion. So it is a natural experiment, discontinuity rule for us. The predetermined agricultural taxes by Ming Dynasty were exogenous to other institutional differences, which could be the confounding factors by the study of Qing Dynasty social unrest. This suggests that the agricultural tax system in Qing Dynasty can serve as a natural experiment discontinuity rule to identify the causality between the physical capacity and the social unrest. So we exploit the variation of agricultural tax and climate shocks by relating them to numbers of social unrest to the prefecture level over 130 years in the regions from Kanxi to Qianlong, Qing Dynasty, about 100 years. So this is the time series of both the disasters and both the unrests. Conflicts mainly occurred during the Yongzheng period and Qianlong 30 years before. There is a strong correlation between the occurrence of the disasters and the social unrests. You can see from this to this, it has strong correlation of both. So I will quick describe the data collection for social unrest. We just see the, we collect the data from the books using a text method. This is an example that we collect data from the Qingshi in the Kunshan County. There are lots of people attack the government and urge the government to provide more famine relief. You can see from this book. So we collect data, the social unrest data from this book. And this figure presents the geographical distribution of the total social unrest by prefectures in the Qing Dynasty. You can see from this map. Another data is the weather records. We collect the data from the Hanlao 500年. The climate events measured by this variable is categorized into the extreme floods, limited floods, normal, limited droughts, and extreme droughts. In my study, we create a dummy variable for extreme floods or extreme droughts. Here is the map of the extreme disasters in the 100 years. And here is the map of social unrest, the total number of social unrest within this time period. So our estimation strategy is a simple DID estimation. The trait is subject to 100,000 picos under the climate shocks. The climate shock is the disaster. And we also control for the time invariant confounding factors and geographic characteristics, population and geographical data. We process this from the GIS. Here is a quick view of our control variables. In our estimation, we all multiply them with the time trends, so they will be not omitted. Here is our baseline results. Consistent with our hypothesis, the baseline results show that when experiencing the disaster, the number of social unrest increased by 1.4% in the prefecture with higher agricultural tax. We use different bandwidths, different weights. The results are robust. Here we talk about the mechanism, the institutional power. In Qing Dynasty, every administrative unit was calculated based on the presence and absence of 4 administrative dimensions: 冲繁疲难, economy, transportation, difficulty of governance, and security. So when aggregate the Chongfan P9 into one, it is the post. We can see from this table, our results show that bibliocollectic capacity plays a pivotal role in explaining the difference of the probability of occurrence of social unrest, because let me grab the agricultural output to fulfill the agricultural tax when prefecture is advocated with the disaster. It is a similar conclusion with the Nancy Chen. And another mechanism is the price and the agricultural tax. We collect the price data for wheat and rice, and we use a similar DID strategy. Here is the result. We can see that the trade multiplier tax will increase the rice. The first column is the rice. It will increase the rice price, and will increase the volatility of the wheat price. So it is a channel for explain our main result. And we also do many mechanisms to find the competing channels, such as the war, the war of the city, the stocks, and many reliefs methods, and the kernel, the quota, and the suitability for the sweet potato and maize suitability.
Hi, Hangyu, could you please wrap up real quick?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we can have up to 4 minutes, but yeah, please wrap up. Yeah.
Okay. And we have many competing channels. Food shortage could be elevated by the relief system, and it can also be influenced by the sweet potato and the maize. So here is our final result. We control for potential confound factors. None of these factors are the competing mechanism. The reason behind the social unrest is quite complex, as we showed before. So thank you for hearing my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hangyu. That's a really interesting topic. Any question? Okay, I'm so impressed that you can collect data from the Asian book. That's really amazing. And I'm surprised that you have so many observations from that. So yeah, it's very impressive. Thank you.